Saw X, directed by Kevin Gruthert. So I've never been the biggest fan of the Saw movies. The first ones had come out when I was still just a wee little child, and that first movie definitely did a lot in making the world look just a little darker, cops and the justice system feel a little more unsafe and unreliable, and the human body infinitely more torturable than I ever thought. Following a straight week of no sleep when I was a child, after going to see the third movie with my brother, I pretty much avoided all the rest of the movies thereafter, only ever being vaguely curious as I got older about what clever traps they were putting into the movies. Narratively, though, I was extremely checked out, especially after hearing through the grapevine the way the movies told their stories out of order, with, it seemed, different main characters all the time, which honestly made it easy to discount going to see them. But much like the way that I eventually got over my Final Destination-induced fear of thrill rides at theme parks, so too did I get over my fear of seeing the human body get twisted and maimed. So when the newest stock of Saw movies in the mid to late 2010s, namely Jigsaw and Spiral, came out, my curiosity was piqued enough to check those out, and they ended up being forgettable. Now, when this new one came out, I was mildly intrigued, even though I had no intention of seeking it out. If it happened to pop up on a streaming service at some point, maybe I would check it out. So imagine my surprise when I hear it's in the 80s on Rotten Tomatoes, or imagine my surprise when it gets certified fresh, or imagine my surprise when some of my favorite movie YouTubers give it good reviews. I had to go see it. So essentially there are three great things that carry this movie. The characters, particularly our star John Kramer and his helper Amanda, who both come off the pages as way more fleshed out and complex than my foggy memory had of them from their prior showings in the movies, and who both are shown to have a range of emotion that elevates them beyond cartoon villains, which leads me into the second thing, which is the story, which sets up a situation that immediately lays at your feet the ugliness people can be capable of, and sort of letting you decide for yourself as you watch the movie how you feel about the consequences. And then finally, third, the themes of mortality, of survival, of moral ambiguity, and evil deeds. It's interesting because in a movie that has many villains, so to speak, the movie brilliantly compares and contrasts them against each other, tossing around the ball of what it means to be evil, or self-righteous, selfish, and hungry to live. Oh yeah, and the traps are pretty good too. There's one that's especially hard to witness on a couple levels that I will not be spoiling, but it involves a wire saw. The third act of this movie is where it becomes a little goofy in its execution and honestly even a bit unsatisfying, but it's not enough to fully derail the movie that came before it. Definitely memorable. 7.5 out of 10. The Nun 2, directed by Michael Chavez. The Nun 2 is none too great. Let me start with positives. The positive is that I did enjoy the story structure in this movie, which is essentially two different plots taking place at the same time that eventually end up meeting up for the third act, which I feel is a neat setup for a story. I also do enjoy the investigative deployment of nuns for all the actions that take place in the movie. Namely Sister Irene, played by Thaisa Farmiga, who is, oh my goodness, so good. She's basically revisiting the places that this nun has been to, trying to piece together what's going on, a la CSI, crime scene files, whatever. The problem, though, is that it doesn't go deep enough into this story. Mostly spending time at a girls' boarding school where we watch creepy stuff happen, and only getting vague clues here and there about the nature of this nun's presence there, of this demon nun's presence there. I think if the movie had committed harder to these two plots that they were balancing and bothered to take the time to set up a genuine mystery and investigative journey search, and paired that with more subtle clues that progressed throughout the story about why the nun is tormenting this random girls' school, could have all led to a more satisfactory third act. What we get is definitely not that. We get mostly surface level setups that feel like they think they're deeper than they're coming off to us as the audience, like trying to feel the kinship between Maurice, the caretaker, and Sister Irene. Maurice, apparently having been in the previous movie, I'd completely forgotten. I haven't seen that movie since I saw it in theaters, if that tells you anything. Or Maurice and the girl from Narnia, or him with the little girl, which the movie actually does take a little extra time to set up more, so it's a bit more believable, but not by much. Or Sister Irene and Storm Reed Nun, who is a rebellious, faithless nun, which could have made for a genuinely interesting dynamic with her and Sister Irene had they bothered to not half-ass it. But no, we only get surface level story and character development with cheap jump scare setups. Another strong aspect in this movie is the setting, which is used well. There's dark winding alleys of a tiny town in France, the dark corners and stairways and hallways just past door thresholds. All of these are used well. It's just that the setup and execution is so predictable and cheap. The magazine stand scare is definitely a creative standout, but could have had more pizzazz if it wasn't spoiled in the trailers. It was just money grabbing shit here with this movie. I felt my attention drifting so many times watching this one. And it's fucking Valak, the demon nun, tormenting people, and they managed to make that just not it. They give Sister Irene blessed holy eyes at the end of the movie, and I am spoiling here because I don't give a fuck about this one. And these blessed holy eyes ward off the nun at the last fucking second, and then for some unexplained reason, the end credits, well, I do know the reason, it's #money. The end credits tease the Warrens coming in to assist for something. Like, it's Nick Fury rounding up the Avengers. Like, I could see and pick up the bones of what almost could have been way better done that got flopped. We got lazy. This could have been exciting, but it's just so blah. This one gets a 2 out of 10. Totally Killer, directed by Nahnatchka Khan. I must inform everybody here that Totally Killer was
totally fucking killer.
I personally never thought a horror movie with elements of time travel could turn out to be so entertaining and enthralling. You know how it is, cynicism runs rampant nowadays, And I will admit, I did go into this movie thinking it would be some sort of Hulu original movie sort of production. No shade to Hulu. I'm sure they've produced some good stuff. This was a Prime production, which has had its fair share of duds and successes. Anyway, I'm so pleased to say that Totally Killer was on point. I don't want to give too much away. All I can say is that the characters, particularly all of the ones that take place in the 80s, are incredibly fun to watch, with most of them getting good screen time to the point that before you know it, you do find yourself invested into what happens to them, which only serves to elevate the fear and slasher elements in the movie. And that's a giant plus here. This movie, which is a horror comedy, can effortlessly and seamlessly switch tones in a way that does not compromise pace or plot immersion. I found myself literally laughing out loud a few times, sometimes even in the middle of a scary situation. This well done balancing did a lot to enhance the storytelling and turn what could easily have been a been there, done that moment into more of a, oh, this is cute and cool moment. The way this movie introduces a world to us lets us get a surface level impression of it, and then gracefully fleshes that very world out to us over the duration of the movie was so on point. It made the journey with our main character so much more engaging and fun. Honestly, there are very few negatives to speak of here. Sometimes the humor or dialogue could be a bit on the nose, especially when Jamie, our main character and the ambassador for 2023 culture, would find herself having to amend, modify, edit, or correct her 80s peers for being problematic and unwoke. Now, this can be explained away with the whole aspect of two worlds colliding, two timelines clashing, so it does make sense that they would, clash. And it was funny to see the way that Jamie would respond to things that made no one else at all in the world bat a freaking eye at all. But a couple of times it did make me go, okay, girl, lighten up a bit. It's a different time after all, It's like the movie's writers felt that they had to co-sign the problematic humor with some acknowledgement of its outdatedness, which did break immersion a bit, but it was very fleeting, and honestly, this is a very nitpicky, judgment. I will say that the third act wrap-up in this movie is passable, but it's not my favorite part in the movie. The journey of getting to the end was the real treat here. And I have to say, though, there is a very visually cool set piece and sequence at the end of the movie that you can look forward to. There is time travel in this movie, and the time travel logic is easy enough to understand, and I love what they do with it here. It's disruptive, but not world-endingly so, and they show it happening instead of telling us, which just adds to the seamlessness of the experience. I watched this movie at home by myself, and I ended up having a giant blast. So I just know that if you gathered up a group of pals for a Halloween kiki, this would be a bomb of a time. Comedy here, I would say, gets a B. Like I said, seeing the world of 2023 versus the world of 1987 was such a treat, and they did a lot to amplify the differences, sometimes in ways that later on would make me think, oh yeah, that is something that's different now than from then. Horror here gets a B-. It's a slasher flick, so you sort of know what to expect. Nothing mind-blowing in this arena. The killer's mask is more infuriating and punchable looking than scary, in my opinion. Story here gets an A-. The puzzle pieces that are here are not the most original thing, but they are put together in a way that it doesn't even matter due to how much fun you're having going on this journey with Jamie. This movie felt like a Goosebumps episode with adult elements, and like that is a giant compliment. The characters here definitely get an A. They are the picture that the puzzle pieces make, and they are what it all hinges on. And it's
stellar.
The performances are great. Everyone seems to be having fun with their roles. The dialogue is fitting. The character arcs aren't insane, but you still get sufficient character development to where it matters, to where it matters. It does what it needs to. This movie didn't take on too much more than it had to, which I think was a wise decision in overall delivering a very enjoyable movie for the Halloween season. I give Totally Killer an A- or an 8 out of 10.